So with
Yeah,
that, can I jump into a little bit of a summary of like where Lightsource operationally is right now in the US and
sure.
globally? And then maybe talk a little bit more deeply about like how you guys are different than on the surface than the other competitors of yours or other developers and also culturally.
Sure. So for those people that don't know, Lightsource BP was started in the UK in 2010. It was focused on a feed-in tariff program out of the UK, doing smaller projects. They were very successful. And so as a result, they started to look to expand into other markets. And one of the first markets that they looked at was the US. And so in by the time I started in late 2017, there was a small team that was established out of San Francisco, and we really started to create a pipeline. At this point, our team is about 300 employees across the US, but we also were supporting Brazil. As we move with the integration with BP, we're thinking about restructuring things and managing through that change, which again is critical, managing through change and ambiguity in the company. So we'll see what happens. But right now, the US team themselves is 300 people. We've done 4.6 billion in financing of projects. I think that's like a little over 3 gigawatts of projects that have been developed.
Hmm.
And so it's just been incredible growth. What do we do differently? Look, I don't think anyone's going to have this massive, perfect solution. And I think everybody says they're the coolest company out there. What I think we do really well is that we care about our people and we really drive an inclusive culture. We have focused, when we first started, I would say we weren't doing that well at that. Actually, one of the reasons I started chatting with Nico was I wanted to drive change and I really wanted to be that advocate and that voice for change. And so I started chatting with Nico of what can I do? I started chatting with other leaders in the industry of how can I drive diversity, equity, inclusion in my organization without necessarily being the top leader, being one of the senior leaders, but not being one of the top, as well as proving that you don't need metrics or targets. It's about proving out that as you create a more inclusive culture that is more diverse, it creates a better culture. One of the things I think we do really well is our hiring and retention packages. At Lightsource BP, we care about our people and our environment, and fundamentally develop clean energy. So what we call it is responsible solar. I'm really passionate, as you said, about our people, which includes our communities as well as our employees. With our employees, we really care about diversity, equity, inclusion. We drive inclusion at a whole other level. We look at, are we bringing in people from the oil and gas industry? Are we bringing in people that have had no experience in solar? And then are we bringing in people with decades of experience? So it's really gone beyond just the gender conversation. It's really moving to, while we have 40% women in the general population, we also have 30%, 35% in women leadership. But we go beyond that because fundamentally the reason for diversity is to drive a better company and a more inclusive company. And so that's something we really care about from our employees. And then externally, we focus on community engagement. Solar is getting harder. Solar and storage are getting harder to develop. And so we need to be a part of the community from the very beginning, all the way through the life of that asset. And so we are engaging with the community. They're being a part of the life cycle of the asset. They're helping us define, for instance, what type of agrivoltaics are we going to have on site? We have an amazing project called Bellflower, which is highly inclusive of the community. We have sheep grazing, we have honey bees, and we actually have beekeepers that are local beekeepers. The sheep grazing is actually local dad and son team that has a farm right down the road. And so we're really inclusive in how we manage our assets. Actually, on that site itself, we also have an engagement with the University of Chicago and Argonne and others, which is actually testing the value of providing pollinator-friendly seed. And so the more you can engage with your community, the more they're going to understand the value of renewable energy. And that's the same way when we treat our employees, right? We care about them. We want them to be included in all parts of the organization. And so fundamentally, that people one is critical to us. And I do think that's a differentiator for us. There was recently, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and there was recently an article, a podcast from the Daily, the New York Times Daily. And they were talking about hybrid work environments. We're struggling with that too, but we feel like we focus first on how the employees want it versus sometimes the management's, no, you're going to get back to the office. Half of our workforce is fully remote. So we can't do that. We literally cannot have everyone in the office because half our employees are nowhere near an office. And so we think first about the employees so that they're in the community, which means they can't be in office. So we have to flex as it's related. So that's the people side.